Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What a sad day. I put on this Phillies jersey. I put on this Phillies hat just thinking about what could have been. It should be opening day. The Phillies should have an opportunity to actually beat the Miami Marlins in a series. But no, instead we are still on this no sports run that is occurring right now, and it sucks. It totally sucks. I wanted to see Aaron Nola out there on the bump with his mini flow going, and I say mini flow because there's no way that it can compare to what Bryce Harper brings to the table in the hair category, because that is just a fantastic mane. That's beautiful lettuce, and I wish I could see it in action. I mean, he had a fantastic spring training, and last year you had to deal with John Heyman and all these tweets and where is he going to go and the big contract, and he missed some time to get himself ready. There was all this hype, the press conferences. He looked smooth. He looked locked in. He was crushing the baseball in spring training, and I'm not telling you that that automatically means he would have been absurd right from the jump, but it's still a good sign that he was murdering the baseball in spring training, getting himself ready for the season, and it just felt like he was locked in. It just felt like he was more comfortable, I think is the best way to describe it, because all that stuff, all that outside noise that occurred last year, as much as you want to say he's a true professional and he just moves on with the next phase once he signs the contract, it's not that easy. Plus, factor in his wife was pregnant and the kid came, so there's a lot involved as well outside of the sport of baseball that he had to focus on last year. It just seems like he was so comfortable this spring training, and it sucks because I wanted to see him right from the jump of the season start to dominate. That would have been so much fun to see. How about little things like Gene Segura at third, Scott Kingery playing second base full-time instead of moving all around the field? How about Didi Gregorius? I mean, this is a guy that you get who played with Joe Girardi. And speaking of Joe Girardi, how do I just skip over that? I mean, I wanted to see Gabe Kapler out of here so damn bad last year because I can't stand anything about him. How about Joe Girardi in the right pinstripes, huh? The correct pinstripes, the red pinstripes. That would have been magnificent to see him in full uniform making decisions instead of Gabe Kapler 1 foot on the step with that goofy chain hanging out of his pocket. No. We have a real skipper, and we have to wait. We have to wait to see him in action. But going back to Didi Gregorius, I mean, come on. This is a guy that can totally help the depth when it comes to hitting, and he was kind of the complete opposite of Bryce Harper in spring training, the limited spring training that these guys had. It took him a long time. It took him a real long time to finally get a knock, to finally get a hit. So he was the complete opposite. But still, I mean, it just would have been fun to watch Didi get going, to watch him play defense at shortstop where he'll be able to pretty much gather everything and make a play. JT Realmuto, Rhys Hoskins, and to be honest with you, I'm not really optimistic about Rhys Hoskins based off of what I've seen earlier in the spring. I just feel like he's not totally where he once was. I feel like it might take more time to get out of this funk that he's in because, you know, once you get into a slump like he did last year, as much as mechanics mean a lot and as much as philosophy up at the plate, whether it's taking pitches or not swinging in certain situations, as much as that comes into it, overthinking comes into it too. And I just feel like he was in such a brutal spot last year that now, and it does kind of relate to the mechanics and the pitches. My point of that all is like, it matters because he's thinking about this, he's thinking about that, he's thinking about this pitch, he's thinking about if he should swing, he's thinking about where his arms are, he's thinking about where his hands are. I mean, there's just so much that's going into play here. But who knows? I mean, maybe he would have found something. Maybe it would have taken a couple weeks or so, but once he had a stretch of a really nice series, he would be back to himself. I'm not really optimistic with Rhys Hoskins. I hate to say it, and I don't know why. I don't know why other than I just feel like maybe this is who he is. Just a guy who is capable of hitting home runs, but I can't believe that he's going to be Pete Alonso, or I can't believe that he's going to be rocking 50 dingers a season. and this it's funny because this relates to exactly what I just talked about in my last podcast that I made about Sidney Jones and the Eagles. I will not be fooled once again. Prove it to me. Prove it to me. I'm not going to no longer be this optimistic guy who thinks this is going to happen, that's going to happen, this guy's going to be dominant, this player's going to be elite. When it comes to someone like Bryce Harper, okay, I think it's realistic to say something like that because he has a track record of being at the top of the league. He has a track record of doing really well, although for some reason there's a lot of Bryce Harper haters out there that look at his numbers and say he stinks without actually watching what he brings to the table, so I find that hilarious. But when it comes to guys like Rhys Hoskins, like, prove it to me. Prove it to me. I am no longer going to get sucked into who is unbelievable, what type of players are sick, unreal, nasty. No. Prove it to me first. And for right now, from what I've seen out of Rhys Hoskins, I just feel like it is what it is at this time. I don't see him turning the page. And I do hate making it seem like because of what happens before the season begins in games that don't matter down in Florida, well, that's totally going to relate to what happens in the regular season. That's not how this works. I've watched baseball long enough to know that whatever happens in March, right, and whatever happens early on when they're in Florida, it does not mean really anything other than the guys getting some swings against real pitchers and things like that. But there were a few times where I'm watching Rhys, and there were these pitches that were right down the middle of the plate, and he's swinging and missing, and that's just a tough look. It's just a tough look. That's all I'm trying to say. I can't believe it. I can't believe this is really happening. I should be watching the Phillies, and I'm sure everyone has seen this on Twitter by now, what today should have been. Phillies opening day, you got the Flyers, the Sixers, and you got March Madness. I mean, today would have been a lethal day for sports, but instead, there's nothing to talk about. There's no sports to be played. I'm trying to process how much I would have to talk about if that day occurred. I'd have a Phillies pod, a Sixers pod, a Flyers pod, a March Madness pod. I mean, this would have been epic. It would have been exactly what I want right now. It might have even been too overwhelming, but guess what? I'll take too overwhelming over this, crying about not having the Phillies. It felt awful putting this jersey on. I went into my closet, I looked at all my jerseys, the Bryce Harper, the Scott Kingery, the Rhys Hoskins. I mean, I got them in the closet, and I cried. I shed a tear. I got an Aaron Nola as well. It should have been. I would even take on the pain of watching Nick Pivetta any day of the week. Now, a few weeks back, I tweeted something pretty funny about Gabe Kapler. I said, I would rather have Gabe Kapler as the manager of the Phillies for the next 10 seasons if it meant we didn't have to go through a tough sports time like this. And I don't think I really meant that. I feel like I would maybe sacrifice a few months without sports just to not have Gabe Kapler in the Phillies organization. But at that moment, at that specific time, I didn't know how to handle myself, and it was an emotional tweet. I don't know, man. Sometimes this stuff just happens. You hear that there's no sports, you don't know what to do, you get all nervous, your hands start moving, you hit the send button. I mean, people make mistakes, right? People make mistakes. Now, I want to tell a story about what happened last year at opening day. I did go, my back was totally against the wall. I mean, you couldn't be farther back than I was. My back was all the way against the wall, and they were still expensive tickets. But guess what? I wasn't going to miss Bryce Harper's first at-bat with the Philadelphia Phillies. When I pull up the Jetro, and yes, of course I'm going to park at Jetro. It's the cheapest parking, and I can totally walk to the stadiums without a problem. I will go for the cheaper parking farther away, and it's really not even that far from Citizens Bank Park. It's more when you go down to the Wells Fargo Center and things like that. It gets a little bit farther. But anyway, Citizens Bank Park, I go into Jetro, and there's just no parking spots whatsoever, and I'm talking about hours before the game. Okay, it's opening day, I figured that. There's so many tailgates going on, bago, cornhole, whatever you like to call it. Beers, amazing, love it, right? It was a cool atmosphere, no doubt, but there was just no parking. You had people parking where, if you go to a Sixers game and there's the parking spots in Jetro and then you use the lanes to get out, the normal lanes in between the parking spots, people were just parking there. So that's where I was. I was just literally in the middle. I mean, there was almost nowhere to stand for people. I was shocked that there were any tailgate tailgating games going on because there's really just nowhere for that to even happen. But of course, you're going to find a way, right? You got your 30 pack, you got your boys, you got your friends. You're going to find a damn way. You got your grill, no doubt about it. It's time to head into the game. And I was with my buddy and his dad. So it was the three of us. We walk up to the stadium, and it is just swarmed. And I mean swarmed. Nobody's moving, and it was just a pack of people, and it looked like a miserable time. But that's where you had to sit in, right? And we're sitting there, and we're sitting there, and we're sitting there. And it's not like the game was at a specific time, and we tried to get in 10 minutes before the game. We walk up with an hour before the game or so. I mean, you would think if you walk up to the gate with an hour to go before the game, you would be okay. You'd be able to get in. But nope, that wasn't the case. We missed Andrew McCutchen's homer, right? I mean, you miss Andrew McCutchen's homer, you missed the starting lineup, you missed all that, and everyone was so disgusted because there were only maybe one or two, not booths, but lanes to get through, to go through the scanning and to get your bags checked and your pockets checked. There was only like one or two moving, and you would think, come on now, this is opening day, and this is what Citizens Bank Park planned to have. So all of us in the mix had the My Teams app on our phone, and we were all watching the game on our phones trying to get into the damn thing. But eventually, we finally squeaked our way through after a really long wait, and as we were walking up to our seats, here comes Bryce Harper for the first time, and I just had the goosebumps. I literally had the chills. My body, it was shaking. And right now, what I have on my computer is a video. Now, this wasn't Bryce Harper. This was Rhys Hoskins in the Grand Slam. But if I remember correctly, they elected to walk Bryce Harper on purpose. The bases were loaded because of that, because they figured, you know what, I'd rather face Rhys Hoskins than Bryce Harper. And to be fair, I feel like I agree with that, especially now. I mean, I kind of just ripped Rhys Hoskins apart a little bit because I said I wasn't optimistic about him. I would do that any day of the week, but it's just great to see it on the first day work out like this. So if you are watching on YouTube, you will see it, but if you are listening to it on any podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, you will just hear the audio. But it definitely was hilarious to hear myself go crazy. I think I even had a voice crack somewhere at the end too. I mean, listen, I'm so pumped up. I'm freaking out. This is amazing. I think this is what it's going to be like all season long, and of course it wasn't, but it sure was something absolutely crazy to witness. I love it. I just love it. Me jumping up and down with the rally down, going crazy. It was such an awesome time to see that, and I'm just upset. You know, the point of that story is I'm upset, and I wish it was happy times. Although, at that time, I was upset too because I paid all that money to go see the game, and I had to wait so damn long to get in. But that's the price to pay when Bryce Harper comes to town, when you have a team with a little bit of juice surrounding them. And I find it interesting that, you know, the juice clearly isn't the same for this season, and that makes sense when you can land a guy like Bryce Harper in free agency. That's going to create conversation. I remember last year doing this, and every single day waking up, is this going to be the day? Is this going to be the day? Am I going to have a video and a podcast to make today about Bryce Harper? And we would hear all these reports, and I remember telling people, relax, stop listening to what these people are saying because they are just trying to create controversy. People are trying to also, not just media members, but then you have the people trying to raise the price inside inside other organizations. Scott Boras was involved. Don't listen to all the crap you hear because you're hearing he doesn't want to be in Philadelphia. He hates Philadelphia. Oh yeah? How about how he has embraced this city beautifully? He posts on his social media in a Ben Simmons jersey getting a workout in today. I mean, can you find a guy who has embraced the city as a free agent like Bryce Harper has coming here? I mean, it really is tremendous. So that's why I said, like, stop falling for all this crap. It's just noise. It's just conversation to have to create some sort of spark around it. And ultimately, we know how it ended. I remember I was in class when it happened, actually, last year at Rowan University. And the whole class, everyone's looking at their phone. Yo, oh my God. Everyone started freaking out. The professor stopped class because it was such a big moment in Philadelphia sports. It was awesome. Now, let's get into, it's like I'm storytelling now because, this should be... This should be a day about a game. I should have a game recap, a game podcast. But no, I don't. I know that's why the storytelling is here today, because I'm reflecting on what should have been with past situations that occurred. But getting into some actual baseball news, and it's not good news either when it comes to the Phillies, Sir Anthony Dominguez, it doesn't look good. Now with time, though, because we don't know what's going to happen, maybe something can happen in a positive way. But to me, it looks like the Phillies messed up another bullpen arm. It seems serious. You're seeing guys like Chris Sale getting Tommy Johns, and now you see who else was out there. Noah Syndergaard with the Mets, a possibility. No, I don't think it's a possibility. I think it actually is confirmed that Tommy Johns is in play. One of the two. Whether it's confirmed or it's a possibility, I forget off the top of my head. Moral of the story is this the time for Sir Anthony Dominguez to maybe do that? Because no one knows what the season's going to be. No one knows when it's going to be back. And is this just a good time? Is this a good window? Because you just don't know when baseball will be back. And here's the thing. I despise how the Phillies handled the bullpen. It's going to be a legit nightmare. Jake Arrieta, in the last spring training game, he left the game with feeling uncomfortable. Now, it doesn't seem to be serious. It doesn't seem like it's going to wipe him out all year long, but you're hearing noise now, and you're hearing that Jake Arrieta left the game because of something, and it could be very precautionary, but I don't care. It's because it's Jake Arrieta, a guy who hasn't been able to be healthy in Philly, a guy who hasn't been able to stay on the mound and throw good pitches, so if he feels any sort of discomfort, that doesn't make me feel good, even if it is just a precautionary move to get him out of a game. Now, for his circumstance, I feel like this time off, okay, that will benefit him. I don't expect that specific pulling in a game to relate to how he will play whenever the season comes back. Sir Anthony, though, a different story. I just feel like, when you think about it, from a few steps back, you got guys who mismanaged injuries, and it's pitchers, and it's a bullpen guy that we rely on for this season, and Jake Arrieta, a starting pitcher that the Phillies relied on for this upcoming season. It just looked like it has already seemed to fail the Phillies before the regular season even started, and that truly upsets me because we all knew this was going to happen. We've been talking about it. This is something that has been discussed prior to games kicking off. The Phillies pitching staff, you're just bringing in a bunch of older guys or guys coming off injuries, and Sir Anthony didn't get the surgery that he possibly needed because one guy for the Yankees didn't get the surgery, and it worked out. But 99% of the other players that had similar scenarios got the surgery because, guess what? They needed it. So it just crushes me inside that the Phillies decided to make that decision. It does not shock me, though. It does not shock me. This is how they do things. This is how they handle things. Now, I heard something interesting about how they're going to approach this season. And it's not going to be 162, but the question is, how are they going to get so many games? How are they going to get the most amount of games possible? And the question was asked about doubleheaders. I personally wouldn't mind seeing doubleheaders, but not to this crazy level. Doubleheaders happen in baseball. I think it should happen at the same rate that it would have throughout 162. Or even if it's a little bit more, I do get that. But I don't want it to be so crazy and so obnoxious just to throw in way more games. If it's 70 games, 75 games, then so be it. If it's 80 games, then so be it. There's no reason to force in all of these double headers to make it 100, and then these pitchers, they're getting worn out, the bullpen getting worn out, and of course I think of it from a Phillies perspective because they have nobody. So these double headers, they're going to get worked, they're going to get abused, they're going to get tired, and it's not just the double header. That double header now affects the game after that, and then that game affects the game after that. It just doesn't seem like a recipe for success, and there's plenty of guys, plenty of pitchers specifically, who would not like to throw that much. It puts the players in a bad situation. Now, the everyday guys, the third baseman, second baseman, center field, it doesn't affect them as much. It's about the pitching. And I feel like it would be bad, and it would be a bad product that now these guys don't have spring training. They miss a significant amount of time, then they're going to have to rework themselves. Whenever this comes back, they're going to have to rework themselves, so they do that. So they get ready, they take a pause. They get ready, and now you're going to throw a monster amount of double headers in the mix to make up a handful of games, to make up more games. I just say almost like golf. Play it as it lies. So if it lies where you're only getting 70 regular season games, that's just the nature of the beast. That's just the nature of what coronavirus has put down on the sports world, and you move on to the next one. Like I said, it doesn't mean no doubleheaders. You can throw in doubleheaders, and if it's a little bit more than the average, okay, but let's not get way ahead of ourselves and put these pitchers in a bad situation where they're uncomfortable, they're throwing too much, and it's bad. It's bad product. I mean, you want a good product at the end of the day, too. Then you think of the business side of things. If they want more money, if they want more revenue, if they want people in the ballparks longer, okay. But then this raises the next question. When the baseball season does come back, are there even people in the stands? Or is this just a, hey, let's make sure we get our TV revenue going? And then that raises the next question. If the Phillies play and the Sixers come back and they figure out a way to go right into the playoffs or go right into the regular season and they have a game, is it on NBC Sports or is it on NBC Sports Philadelphia Plus? Or, I'm sorry, is it on NBC Sports Philadelphia, the regular channel, or NBC Sports Philadelphia Plus? What happens if the Flyers are also playing that night as well? Where is that game? I mean, there's just so much from the TV side, too, that this opens up so many questions. It's crazy when you really process it to that degree. TV revenue, all these guys, all these teams, all these leagues coming back at the same time. What is Fox Sports going to air? What is CBS going to air? What if it's, head-to-head? It's head-to-head. What happens? Both had the rights. Well, now what happens? I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. It's such a beautiful day, and baseball snuck up on us. Opening day. It doesn't even feel right coming out of my mouth. Opening day. And maybe that's because of how wild it's been. I feel like I'm at the point now where I'm hitting a wall with all of this. I'm stuck in my house. I'm stuck in my basement. There's no sports. Sports used to take my mind off of things. If I had something going on in my life, but a Sixers game was on at 7, the Sixers game would be on, and I would be so focused, and I'd be so ready to mentally break this thing down, X's and O's, get out my opinion, write some notes down, record a podcast after. It wasn't just the 7 to 9:30 that would take myself away from the real world, because then what do? I get my notes together. I come on here. I express myself. I put the podcast up. I upload the podcast. I mean, once a game started, the rest of my night was fulfilled by this, the escape, and I'm just hitting a wall right now, and maybe that's why it doesn't feel right to say opening day, because of all of this, because of hearing coronavirus left and right, and seeing all these death numbers go higher and higher in all these different countries. I'll tell you what, though, 30 years from now, we will look back at this time and say, holy hell. The thing is, it's not 30 years from now. We are experiencing it right now. It's at the point where NBC Sports Philadelphia yesterday played a simulated game of the Sixers. Are you serious? We're talking about NBA 2K20? No, it's a beautiful day. I want to see Aaron Nola on the bump in Miami. I want to see Rhys Hoskins try to hit a baseball. I want to see Bryce Harper actually hit the baseball. I want to see Scotty Jetpacks. Remember that picture of him all beefed up, ready to go? Yeah, I want to see that. I want to see Gene Segura. I know that a lot of people hate Gene Segura. I don't hate him. I don't love him or anything, but I don't hate him. I want to see Segura at third base. How about Spencer Howard? Eventually, I want to see Spencer Howard, Alec Boehm. I want to see these guys play. If there's one positive from a Phillies perspective, it's maybe Andrew McCutchen will be ready to be on the field when the regular season starts, so that's a bonus. And I thought about that because maybe you see Spencer Howard. Maybe you see Alec Boehm. If the game plan was June, if the game plan was July, and these players now start the season in June, July, well, what happens then? And we actually talked about this on the Phillies podcast that myself, Jeff Mosher, and Frank Close do. It is the Powder Blue Podcast. And I think I'm actually going to start uploading the visual on my YouTube channel. But there is an Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and any other podcasting platform out there, the Powder Blue Podcast. I would check that out and leave a rating and a review if you would like to do so. And definitely check that out. We're also on Twitter, at Powder Blue Phils. So we are pumping out Phillies content throughout this time and once the season kicks off. So that will be a very fun listen. And I had an interesting argument with Jeff Mosher on Hector Neris. He is anti-Hector Neris, and I don't think he's great, don't get me wrong, but he's not awful. Like, he's the farthest thing from the issue. And is he a closer? Is he like a legitimate closer? No, but for being thrown in that role, for a guy who isn't a serious shutdown closer, for him to be in that role, he hasn't done a poor job. And I'm definitely looking at last year. I know that there was a time where he once moved down to AAA, and then he got recalled, and a lot of people don't like his pitch, his go-to pitch. It's not a pitch you throw for a strike, so when you're a batter, you understand, you lay off of it. This is Mosher's argument, and it's a fine argument. I get it. I'm not trying to sell him or sell anyone that Hector Neris is this guy that's lethal in the back of the bullpen. But for the circumstance and for that spot being what it is, for him getting thrown into it, he's not doing the worst job ever. And I am dating it back to last season. When you look at his saves and his attempts, it could be a lot worse. That's all. But I would sacrifice watching him blow a bunch of saves right now just to see the damn sport. I'm currently watching the 2008 World Series run. That's what I'm watching right now on YouTube. It's terrible quality. It's standard def, and I'm airplaying it to my TV. But guess what? I'm watching it. I'm watching Cole Hamels do his thing. I'm watching Jimmy Rollins chase Utley. Because that's what I have to do right now. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Hit that thumbs up button and subscribe, and I will see you next time.